I'm back with another video. It's been a long time since I posted, not for any particular reason, but while I wasn't posting, I happened to move to Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm pregnant. Woo! So I don't know if that reads on my face, but there's a baby inside of me. So the video I'm going to do today is my favorite books of 2019. I read 55 books in 2019, and some of them were really good and some of them were really bad. So I'm going to talk about both the good and the bad. Okay, this list is in no particular order, it's just how I put it into my phone, but I have 7 of my top favorite books, and I'm going to go over all of them, and then I'm going to tell you which one was my favorite. So my first favorite book of 2019 is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman, and it's about a main character who's very lonely and sad, and she just exists in her bubble, and she doesn't really do anything outside of her comfort zone. She just has her routines and she sticks to them. And this book follows her as she steps outside of her comfort zone and gets to meet other people and makes connections. But it's a lot more than that. There's kind of like a weird little mystery thrown in. And it's just very, very quirky. So I could see how it might throw some people off, but its uniqueness is really what made it stick with me, and I recommend it. Okay, the next one on my list is The Book of Essie by Megan McLean Weir. So I had never heard of this book before. I still haven't heard anybody talk about it, and it was crazy. It's unlike anything I've ever read before. I don't even know what genre to classify it in, but basically it follows a main character named Essie who is part of a family that is essentially the Duggars. So don't let that turn you off, but it explores this hyper-religious, super conservative, big family, and they're on TV, like the Duggars, and there are also lots of scandals that are involved in this family, like the Duggars. So it's super interesting. This isn't a spoiler because you know this from the beginning. She finds out that she's pregnant and she's an unwed teenager. So obviously this poses a really big problem for her family and how to spin this on their TV show. And it's just really, I don't know if eye-opening is the right word, because obviously there is a level of fiction to it, but I'm sure there is also a level of truth to it. So it's just unlike any other book I've ever read, and I haven't heard anything similar to it. And it was just super gripping and sad, but really poignant, so it's a good one. Next up is Winter in Paradise by Ellen Hilderbrand. I read a lot of chick lit this year, which is fine. It made me happy and I liked it. But Ellen Hilderbrand is kind of a consistently top-notch chick lit author for me. Her books are a good mix of something lighthearted, but they also have some substance to them, so it's not just like mindless reading. And this book is part of her winter series. So she released one in the winter of 2018 and then one in the winter of 2019. The first one was in 2018 and that one is Winter in Paradise. And it's way different than her other books. So if you haven't read any Ellen Hilderbrand, this one is fine to start with because it's the beginning of a series. It's completely different than her other books. And most of her books take place on Nantucket, but this one takes place in the British Virgin Islands. So it's really tropical and like it just makes you want to be somewhere warm, which can be a good thing or a bad thing, so read at your own risk. But I'm planning a vacation to the British Virgin Islands that will never happen, so cautionary tale. But this book follows Irene Steele, whose husband was killed in a helicopter crash on New Year's Day. So it's also like not a thriller, but kind of a mystery. Like they're still investigating it and how it happened, and he had a second life that she didn't know about. So she has to go down to the British Virgin Islands and investigate that and figure it out. But it's not dark because it's just still like lighthearted, if it can be lighthearted. It's still just a book about family and friendships and forgiveness, and it's also at the same time really gripping. So she has left off both of the books of this sequel on a big cliffhanger, so we just have to read the next one. Next up is Recursion by Blake Crouch. So he also wrote Dark Matter, which I read a couple years ago, and it was like a mind-blowing book. It was so crazy, so I've never forgotten that author, and when he came out with this book, I knew I wanted to read it, and it was also mind-blowing. So his books are like sci-fi thrillers, and to be honest, I don't understand at least 75% of them because they're just so high-level knowledge of science and scientific things. So it's but you can still enjoy it even if you can only understand a little bit of it, which doesn't really make sense, but like you don't have to fully grasp that scientific knowledge to really enjoy it and feel the story, because there's still a really strong plot and there's still really strong characters. So this one, Recursion, follows a police officer, and he is living in a world where memory basically, it follows a police officer who lives in a world where there is a disease where memories flood into your brain and you cannot distinguish whether or not the life you're living is your real life or the life you're remembering is your real life. So it follows a long period of time where he and another scientist are investigating this and trying to figure it out, and you just have to read it. Like, I really cannot explain it because, again, I don't understand it, but it's good. That's not a strong endorsement, but read it. Almost done. So my favorite thriller of the year was Someone We Know by Sherry Lupina. She also wrote A Couple Next Door, which I read and liked, but I didn't love it. But this one was so good. Like, it was the perfect thriller because it wasn't too scary. I've read really scary thrillers that are terrifying. This one was not that scary, but it was still so suspenseful and immersive and gripping. And it was just really good. So it's kind of a simple murder investigation where a woman is found murdered in her car at the bottom of a lake, and these two police officers are investigating her murder and trying to figure out who done it. And they are looking essentially at her husband and a group of neighbors in this neighborhood who live around her husband. So it's super relational, which is really cool and not typical of thrillers, but it's all about the relationship these neighbors have with each other, and at some point everybody is basically accused of being the murderer, and then at the end it's, of course, nobody who you thought it would be. And the other interesting thing about this book was that she left it kind of on a cliffhanger, which I've never read a thriller that left it like that, hanging on a thread, but she definitely set it up for another book. She might not do it. I could see how she would just leave it, but it's really cool that she left it like that, because even when you get to the end, after she's kind of tied up all the strings of who murdered this woman, there's still like a little thread of doubt that makes you think, what's happening here? Okay, last but not least is my favorite book of 2019, and it was so good. So it was A Spark of Light by Jodi Picoult. This is the first Jodi Picoult book I've ever read, and it was very heavy. So if you haven't heard of this book, basically it follows an active shooter situation in an abortion clinic, and it flashes back to the events leading up to this shooting. But basically it follows multiple different storylines, how they got to this abortion clinic, why they're there, for a variety of reasons. And in my opinion, it should be required reading for everybody, because it helps you see that things aren't black and white, it's all gray. And so it like truly changed my perspective about things, and it just makes you sympathize with people and realize that sometimes things aren't just political issues, it's like real humans experiencing these things. And it was very, very heavy, but also just so thought-provoking, and it was really a worthwhile read. And it was my favorite book of 2019 because it really did change my heart and perspective on things, and it reminds you that people are just people and we're doing the best we can, making the best decisions we can. And it was also at the same time super thrilling and entertaining. You want to get to the end, you want to see what happens, you want to know how it ends. It's tragic, but it's just so, so good. Really recommend it. Okay, lastly, I'm gonna say my favorite authors of the year, and they are the authors whose books I read the most. They're not exactly literary heroes. I don't know how to phrase that, but I did read a lot of chick lit this year. So my top two were Ellen Hilderbrand and Sophie Kinsella. It is what it is. I really enjoyed their books and they made me happy, so I'm not gonna apologize for that. Sophie Kinsella's books are super lighthearted and funny and just like watching a Hallmark movie in a book. And then Ellen Hilderbrand's are a little heavier, but they're still beach reads, who are we kidding? And I just read a lot of their books this year, really enjoyed them, will continue to read their books, absolutely. So that's it for my 2019 favorite books, and I'm looking forward to 2020 for a variety of reasons, baby, but also for books. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll have another video before I have the baby because I'm not very consistent, am I? Bye!